My husband is in love with his student. I have no idea what to do. My husband and I, both 35 right now, met in college. We fell in love and got married 8 years back. I gave birth to our daughter in 2020. My husband is a professor at this med school. He's a doctor himself. My friend, Sarah, also works in the same college, and she's in the same department as my husband. A few months back, in December, Sarah took me out for lunch and told me that she suspected something's going on between my husband and this med student, 25F. She claims she had seen both of them give yearning looks to each other. She said that she's known my husband for so long and she'd never seen him talk to any other woman like this, that he'd been so aloof around women all these years, but it's just different with this one girl. In that moment, I had laughed at her face. I remember telling her that she's jumping to conclusions based on these supposed yearning looks. "That's why I didn't tell you before," she said. "I was confused too. It's not like he goes out of his way to talk to her, but whenever they do talk, it's like watching a slow burn romance movie. She looks at him like he's Brad Pitt, and he looks at her the way he used to look at you." I remember the exact words, because they stung. Internally, I was breaking down. Externally, I just smiled and told her that she's probably overthinking. That night, I casually mentioned this to my husband. I was laughing at the absurdity, and I expected him to join in and deny the wild possibility that he's in love with a student. But he didn't. Instead, he looked at me, all teary-eyed, and said, "I'm sorry. I can't get her out of my mind. I've tried, trust me. I should have told you sooner, but I thought I could save our relationship. I really wanted to." I asked him if he had cheated on me. He said no. He said he didn't even talk to her, nor did they have any contact outside of college, and that he completely understood how morally depraved it is to try and pursue a relationship with a student. She wrote him a letter about a year back, confessing her love for him, and he had told her that even though he was into her, nothing would come of it. Apparently, that was when the yearning looks had started. I honestly don't remember how I reacted then. I think I just started packing and came to live with my parents along with my daughter. I've been living with my parents since then. Half of me wanted him to come and beg for forgiveness, but he never did. He comes by sometimes to spend time with our daughter, but that's it. He never talks about the elephant in the room, nor do I bring it up. I keep checking that girl's social media. She's insanely beautiful, almost doll-like and intelligent. I can't help but think that someone like him should be with someone like her. He's always been very good-looking and I'm more of a plain Jane. She's the Meredith to his Derek. I don't know what to do. What do I even tell people? I don't even know who I am without him. Some part of me still wants him to come back. Edit. I've decided to talk to him. I know I've been avoiding this for months, but after reading all the responses, I feel it's time to rip that band-aid out. I'm going over to our house, and I will update on what happens. Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "So he didn't actually cheat? He has a crush? If I'm understanding that right, he hasn't betrayed you yet. Crushes sometimes happen. That doesn't mean the relationship is over. Get therapy with him." I mean, cheating for me isn't just physical. He's had crushes in the past, and I've had crushes in the past, but we'd always be upfront, and then we would laugh about it. This one feels like a betrayal because he was attracted to someone for more than a year. This someone gave him a freaking love letter. He told her that he's attracted to her, and not once did he mention it to me. That's a huge breach of trust for me, and I don't think I can look past it. Then OP elaborated more about her friend Sarah and what she observed and said, "He said he entirely stopped interacting with her after the letter incident. It does seem absurd, but even my friend Sarah corroborated this. She said he never went out of his way to talk to her before, and then almost entirely stopped talking. Given that Sarah and him are in the same department 24/7, and that she noticed something as small as them giving each other looks, I'm sure she would have noticed anything out of the ordinary. I've had access to his phone and his passwords throughout, and he wasn't texting or calling her either. That's why this feels weird." Update. The day I made the post, I met up with Sarah for dinner. I thanked her for telling me about my husband and the student, and also for being such a good friend. I asked her about my husband. She said there's nothing unusual. He's been a bit withdrawn and aloof with everyone lately, but that's about it. Yesterday, I went over to my house unannounced. He was alone in his office. I told him I wanted to talk. He said he'll explain everything. So apparently this woman has had a crush on him since 2 years. Her friends ship her with him. She would stare at him during her rotations and would blush whenever he looked or talked to her. Back then, he didn't think much of it. Many girls have had crushes on him, and he always ignored it. About 1.5 years back, they were in the same research group thing. I don't know how this works, but there were 5 to 6 people along with these two. Because of this, they had to spend time working together. And it was then that he started noticing her. He went into detail about how he was impressed with her intelligence, blah blah blah, and her beauty, blah blah blah. The moment he realized that he had a crush on her, he dropped out of the research thing. This was a year ago. A few weeks later, she gave him the letter confessing that she has feelings for him. The first thing he told her after reading it was, "You can get in trouble because of this." But she didn't care. She wanted an answer. She had asked him, "Is it all in my head?" To which he replied with, "It's not just in your head, but nothing can come out of it. I hope you understand." And that was the last time they interacted. According to him, the yearning looks Sarah described were more of awkward eye contacts than anything else. He told me that even though he is still attracted to her, he has no intention of pursuing any sort of relationship with her, regardless whether they stay together or not. He said he's willing to change his job and go to therapy. I told him to give me some time to think about it. So, to sum up, 1. This has been going on for 3 years, and not once did he mention anything to me. 2. The student and him spent a considerable amount of time last year working on the research. 3. He told her he liked her back. And 4. He's still very much attracted to her. And that's why I've decided to go ahead with a divorce. I don't think I can trust this man again, and a relationship without trust isn't something I am interested in. I've told my parents about it. They're not exactly on board, but they are still supportive. I've also contacted my lawyer about the same. It's going to be a long process, I believe. That's it. I believe this is my last update. Now here are some more relevant comments. User 1 said, "It's a crush. He is not in love, OP." That doesn't matter. He crossed a line he shouldn't have by telling her he likes her. Then user 2 commented and said, "Literally, I can't believe these comments. He's gushing about her beauty and intelligence. He told her the feeling was mutual? He could have easily denied it to her and then kept his distance, but he liked the attention." Well, I mean, to be fair to him, he wasn't exactly gushing about her. I kept asking and he kept answering. The deal breaker for me was him telling her the feeling is mutual. And finally, user 3 commented and said, "OMG, these dumb comments. People saying, 'You're too hasty, it's a crush.' What? The man literally said, 'I can't get her out of my head.' If he was committed to his wife, he would have changed jobs proactively, not wait until now. He let it develop to the point where he can't take his mind off of her, and y'all are saying it's no big deal. You guys have obviously never had a relationship." My husband said he didn't change his job earlier because, quote, "I'm a doctor and there are people counting on me. I couldn't just walk out on them one day." He also said he's willing to change his job if that's what it takes to make me stay. So I haven't really brought this up in a story in a while, but sometimes when it comes to cheating, right, it's up to you finding your lines and stuff like that. Like, for most people, sleeping with someone else is cheating. For other people, flirting isn't, but some people might. Some people say having a crush is cheating, others might not. So it's just about finding your personal line. And as for OP, she found her personal line. And also, like she mentioned, it wasn't the fact that there was the crush and the little bit of flirting. It was the fact that he said the feeling is mutual. And OP was like, "All right, that is too much for me." Yeah, he said he'll change jobs and go to therapy, but he held on to it for 3 years. And regardless of how other people feel, he still crossed OP's line. And that's what really matters. But at the same time, I understand why some people were like, "It's just a crush. He didn't actually do anything." But for her, it's the 3 years, it's the reciprocated feelings, it's the fact he didn't do anything about it. But anyway, next story. Story number 2. I accidentally caused a war between my family and my brother's wife's family with one innocent text message. So, my brother's wedding happened 2 days ago, and it turned into complete chaos, which I know even though I wasn't there. You might wonder why I didn't attend the wedding if it's my brother's. Well, it's because of his wife's family. He did send me an invitation to the wedding because he wanted me there, but his fiance told him I couldn't attend because I had a boyfriend. You might be confused, but I am a man, a bisexual man to be exact, and I have a boyfriend who I wanted to bring to the wedding. She said even though she doesn't have a problem with that, and he doesn't have a problem with that either, her extremely religious parents who already forced her to do the wedding in a church would most likely banish us from the wedding and cause trouble between our families. After she told him, my brother told me and also explained why. You might think I was angry. The truth is, I was relieved. I hate going to big events with lots of people because of my social anxiety. And I was already used to not being able to attend certain events because of my sexuality, so it was nothing I haven't heard before. So at the day of the wedding, I stayed home with my boyfriend. It's worth mentioning my parents apparently didn't know I wasn't attending the wedding. I was chilling at home cuddling with my boyfriend when I suddenly got a text message from my parents asking me where I was because they couldn't find me at the wedding party. I told them I wasn't attending the wedding and if my brother hasn't told them anything. They said no and asked me what happened. I didn't see any reason to lie, so I sent them a text telling them exactly why. Now, I have to admit, I don't exactly know what happened after I sent them this message because they read it but didn't reply. And why do they care in the first place? They didn't notice I wasn't there before until the wedding was already over. They only noticed when the wedding party started. However, apparently my parents spoke to my brother about it, and all of a sudden my absence was the main topic of the wedding party. From what I heard, two fronts formed. On the one hand, my parents and the rest of my family were against the family of my brother's wife, and apparently he as a husband now felt compelled to take her side and tried to argue in her favor. It's crazy to think that I was just sitting at home living my best life with my boyfriend while all of this crap went down on his wedding. The wedding party was ruined, and my brother appeared on my door angrily screaming at me why I felt the need to ruin his wedding. I was confused and asked him what happened, and he told me everything. I told him it wasn't my intention. I just told our parents what happened because they didn't know and wanted to know where I was, and I thought he told them beforehand. He screamed at me that I ruined his wedding. I told him it's not my fault he wasn't honest with them. I just respected their wish to not attend the wedding. I couldn't know it would have gone down like this because, like I said, I couldn't attend several events before because of my sexuality, and my parents never said anything about it, so I thought it would be the same thing here. But I gotta admit, it's kinda sweet that my parents and the rest of my family stood up for me. They haven't done it before. That is a more than welcome change, but I still feel kinda bad because apparently I really ruined the wedding party. Update number 1. 2 days later. Didn't think I would give an update, but many interesting things have happened. So, after my brother's visit, his wife and him went to honeymoon, and the way the wedding party went might have even been worse than I imagined. So, what happens now is incredible. When I said in the main post that two fronts had formed, I only meant that metaphorically, of course, but it is no longer that. While nothing much interesting happened in the first 2 days afterwards, the terror started as soon as my brother and his wife went on their honeymoon. My mom and dad visited me and told me how the wedding party escalated and they were so close to physical violence. I thought it was funny at first, but this truly bothers me. I also want to point out that you did a great job at convincing me it's not my fault. But hearing my parents' side still gave me a bad feeling in my stomach. However, like I said, the terror started shortly after they went to their honeymoon, and when I say terror, I mean that my sister-in-law's family found both my Facebook and Instagram account and started spamming me with hateful messages. I received insults and hateful messages from various different accounts who all had one thing in common. They all had somewhat of a Christian theme, and all of them had the same last name. So it wasn't hard to find out whose accounts it was, mainly because I don't know my sister-in-law's family at all. I only know her, and I know her parents were homophobic Christians. But whatever. They not only started attacking me, they also found the account of my boyfriend over on my account because we're linked as a couple, and they started to send him the same messages. The messages contained only one-sided typical bigot stuff like, "You're burning in hell for your sins." One even called me and my boyfriend two devils in disguise. And the other side was just blatant insults, you get the idea. I called my parents and told them what they are doing. Then I sent a text message to my brother with screenshots of the messages his wife's family sent me, to which he replied with, I shouldn't disturb him with that during his honeymoon as I had already destroyed his wedding party. I couldn't believe it. He was just like them. He did send me an apology after my mom told me she called him, but none of this is the main reason I'm giving you this update early. It's because I got a call this morning from an unknown number. I hesitated because I thought it was one of them, and I was right, but it was none of the people who insulted me. I heard a woman's voice who introduced herself as the half-sister of my brother's wife. She said it didn't go unnoticed what her family was doing and that she wanted to apologize for them. I told her I'm not going to tell anyone in her family about this and that I don't blame her for her family's actions. She thanked me and hung up. I don't know why, but I have this feeling she only did this to protect her family from being reported. My mother wrote to me earlier that she wants to report the insults and the harassment of these people, and that she demands for my brother to divorce his wife or she will disinherit him from her will, because that's not how she raised him. A little radical in my opinion, but I understand where she's coming from. This entire thing escalated so much, it's unbelievable. Thank you all so much for your support on my first post. New update, 1 day later. Some of you were wondering why I seem so calm and casual in the update when I'm discriminated against. The truth is that I am in a relationship with my boyfriend for 3 years now, and the things that happen now are nothing compared to what I've been through. I receive hateful messages almost daily, not only from their accounts but in general. I've learned to ignore that. There have been way worse situations, such as when my boyfriend went to visit his family and I couldn't go with him. We kissed each other goodbye at the train station, and when the train left and no one saw it, a group of guys attacked me. I was sent to the hospital because of severe injuries, just to give you an idea of what I had to deal with in the past. And don't get me wrong, we will report my sister-in-law's family, but what they are doing is nothing I haven't seen 1,000 times before. Update number 2, 9 days later. It's been a few days. First of all, me and my boyfriend are fine. Luckily for us, they didn't go any further than their text messages. My mom filed a report against them. I don't know the current situation about that, as I haven't filed the report myself though. However, the reason I'm updating you is for something else. First of all, one person in my sister-in-law's family is actually going to testify in my favor and against her family. It really takes courage to do so. It's the same person that called me in the last update. Somehow they found out that she is into women. No reason to hide it anymore. However, she said she's fine and is going to stay at a friend's house. I have so much respect for what she does. Imagine the strength you need to testify against your own family. I now feel bad for assuming she only called me to save her family from being reported. More importantly, what is the current situation with my brother? Well, my mom spoke to him and told him to leave his wife or she will disinherit him from her will. He decided to stay with his wife, and my mom made her threat come true. My brother is no longer in my mother's will. My father did the same. When I visited them, I also told them that I wish that this entire situation went different. They assured me it's not my fault, but I feel like if it wasn't for me, then my family wouldn't have been ripped apart like this. I haven't spoken to my brother since then. My boyfriend feels similar. He also told me he kind of feels responsible for all of this chaos. I assured him it's not his fault. But honestly, I wasn't even sure if I could say this in my position. On the other hand, it was my sister-in-law's family's bigotry that ruined everything, and everything would have been fine if I could have just attended. But now, it's time for me to grow distant from this situation. We will see what the report will do. I have followed everyone's advice and decided to document everything. The insulting and harassing messages continued until 2 days ago, so I have much to say about them. Unfortunately, homophobia is still very much normalized in our society. I already said it in a post in my profile, but the reason I'm so calm and casual about the situation is the simple fact that I'm used to situations like this. They don't get to me anymore. If I let any insult get to me, I wouldn't make it for a long time. It's a coping mechanism. I've been into situations where I was sent into the hospital because I kissed my boyfriend in public. So insult and harassments like theirs is nothing that I haven't seen before. I want to say thank you for all your support on my first 2 posts. Update number 3, 2 months later. I think some of y'all are waiting for an update, so here I am. Keep in mind that this update will probably be the last one. So last time I told you my mother was pressing charges against them, and to my surprise, we won. They weren't going to jail or anything, but they had to pay for their actions. Literally. There was one incident where my sister-in-law's dad was actually trying to find out where I lived and asked my brother, who told him. Only God knows what he would have done to us if we had still lived there. But in the time span of the last 2 months, me and my boyfriend moved to a different place, which my brother didn't know anything of. Also, their social media accounts were deleted. However, I don't know if this was part of their punishment or if they did it themselves. My mom has also carried out the threat towards my brother and disinherited him from her will. After he came back from his honeymoon, he begged her to put him in again. She said only if he apologized to me. She invited me and my boyfriend over, and my brother sat in the living room with this mad look on his face. She made him apologize, but I didn't accept this apology because I could tell it wasn't sincere. He did it because he had to, and not because he was actually sorry. I told my brother that I am disappointed in him for who he has become. Before that, we had this huge bond and usually never judged each other for stuff like this, and all of a sudden, he has such a huge problem with me having a boyfriend. I just don't get it. I told him that I missed the old him. He didn't respond to anything. He just sat there quietly staring at the floor. After I finished, he just got up and left. This was the last time I spoke with him, and it's already been a few weeks since this happened. My parents have been paying much more attention to the discrimination I faced since the incident. They wanted to learn more about the problems I face as a queer person. I really love them. My dad even got a bisexual pride flag for me and asked if he could hang it in our bedroom. I love that I have such great parents. I just wished for my brother to become the person he once was. By the way, since the case with my sister-in-law's family is over, I didn't hear anything about their lesbian daughter. She supported us during the process, but we lost contact afterwards, and I just hope she's fine. New update. Number 4, 6 months later. The final update of my story happened 6 months ago, and I figured some of you might be interested in how things are currently doing. So I'm back at least for this post right now. There have been some things that have happened. First of all, I want to give you an update about the sister of my brother's wife. Around 2 months after my update, she texted us and asked if she could come over. We talked a while, and I was relieved to find out that she is fine. She said that she moved in with her girlfriend when the case was over, simply because her parents and the rest of her family had disowned her and threatened her with physical violence if she dares to return. However, the relationship with her girlfriend ended after a while, and she asked us if she could stay for a few days until she found something. She stayed with us for 2 weeks. During that time, my parents had visited us and offered her to stay with them because they had a big house with some free space. She stays there currently because she wants to study, and my parents had no problem with letting her stay a little longer. Me and my boyfriend also support her financially a little bit. We included her into several different celebrations, such as Christmas and New Year's Eve, and I feel like she is the sister I never had. What's probably more interesting for you is how my brother is currently doing. The truth is, I don't know exactly. We haven't spoken since the apology. However, he actually tried to attend our Christmas celebration party, but the moment he appeared, my dad kicked him out and said that, and I quote, "This homophobic rubbish is no longer allowed in my house." God, I love my dad. Oh, and by the way, of course, both of my parents went through with disowning him. My boyfriend and I are still together, and I feel like he might be the one I want to marry. This entire situation has made our bond so much stronger. I plan on proposing to him, but there are so many ideas floating around in my head for the proposal that I can't really decide which one. Also, the social media accounts of my sister-in-law's family have disappeared entirely. All of them. But I assume they have already made new ones under new names. I'm just glad all of this is finally over. I don't have any compassion left for my brother. I just wish he had never developed this way. Everything that happened to him, he brought it on himself. If you guys want, I can update you when I'm engaged. Thanks for reading, and I wish you all the best. Then in the comments section, one user said, "OP, be sure to hire security at your future wedding in case your brother, his wife, and his in-laws try to boycott it in any way, shape, or form if they somehow find out where it'll take place." I never thought about that, but true. If someone would try and do something like this as revenge, it's them. I will keep this in mind. Update. 2 months later. Do you remember when I told you in my last update 2 months ago that I will propose to my boyfriend? Well, I did it today. I brought up so many ideas that it was really hard to decide, so I gave him some subtle hints. Not too obvious, just enough to see how he reacts and then decide based on his reaction. In the end, I made a photo album of us featuring the most important events in our relationship. Each of them had a thought of mine and a caption below them. Some of them were meaningful, but some of them were just random. Like one photo of us eating at his favorite restaurant at his birthday, and the caption was just something like, "Dang, that pizza was good." That made him laugh. We walked to his favorite spot in town, which is a wonderful lake. That is where I gave him the album, and I told him it's a present and to look through it. He was focused and didn't notice what I was doing behind him, as I just told him I was getting something I forgot. I positioned myself behind him, and that is when the last page came into play. That page had a photo of me holding the ring in the same way I positioned myself behind him, looking straight at the camera. And the caption says, "Hopefully he says yes." He turned around in disbelief and started crying almost immediately when he saw me. I couldn't even finish the question and he already said yes. It was exactly how I hoped it would go. I always dreamt of making my proposal like it was out of a romance novel, and I was successful. So yeah, that's it. I'm gonna marry him. I already told my entire family, except for my brother, of course. They were so happy about it, especially my mom and new sister who shrieked out of excitement on the phone. I assume my brother knows anyway, considering I shared it on Facebook. You guys probably aren't wrong that he might plan something, but if he does, it won't stop us. Update. 1 week later. My boyfriend and I will have a rather unconventional wedding. I just have to tell you guys this. We are currently planning our wedding, and instead of a regular wedding dance, we decided we want to have a lightsaber battle against each other. Of course, it's not just a random lightsaber battle, it's like a choreography that we have to learn. We're both huge Star Wars fans. My dad, who also loves Star Wars, said he wants to join, but he has no idea how to do that. He said to add like a story to it, that he wants to have a lightsaber battle against my fiance, where my fiance has to fight for the right to marry me, where my dad would eventually lose, and then I would step in to test my fiance's strength myself, and there would be a lightsaber battle between us. And then I would acknowledge his force as worthy enough. I know some people might think it's childish, but I am so excited for it. Our wedding will be a day for people to remember. Okay, so I feel like lightsaber battles just need to be incorporated more so in day-to-day life. Just whatever, like graduations, promotions, birthdays, proposals, I don't know. We could just use some more lightsabers and lightsaber duels, even to settle disputes. We could also settle disputes with Yu-Gi-Oh! So long as you have the dual disc on your arm and none of the newer cards. But as for the story started with homophobia and the brother and the sister-in-law and her family, and then they got sued, and then that's it. The end. Whatever. Forget about them. We don't need them because OP's getting married and having a really cool freaking wedding. And he's got a new sister, apparently so, and that's pretty cool. And his family is, or his parents are more closer to him. They seem to understand him more. They want to understand him more. So, I mean, this is a good ending. Unfortunately, he doesn't have his brother back, like he said. But maybe he can come back. I don't know. That's up for them to decide. But it seems like if the brother does come back, he has a lot of work to do. But OP seems to be in a good place, him and his fiance. Anyway, next story. Story number 3. I am 25F. My friend is 24M, and he told my boyfriend, 25M, we were having an affair, but we're not. My boyfriend doesn't believe me. I want to start off with that I realize how messed up a situation this is, and I understand why my boyfriend would be upset and even suspicious, but I can't believe he doesn't trust me. So, I've been with my boyfriend Paul for 3 years. In the beginning of our relationship, Paul had some issues with trust. He had been cheated on in the past. I made it clear right away that I had never cheated on anyone, that I would not, and that I understood if he had trust issues from the past, but that it was a deal breaker for me to be with someone who couldn't trust me. He has, since those early days, been really good about it, and throughout our 3 years together, I think I have earned his trust. I have always been honest with him and never cheated on him. He's asked to see conversations of mine that I've had with male friends twice over those 3 years, and I've obliged. The second time, however, I made it clear to him that I was very unhappy to be treated as though I was acting suspiciously, and did not deserve privacy with friends when he had no reason at all to think I was being shady. I said that if he didn't trust me because of something I had said or done, I was 100% happy to have a conversation about that, to discuss it, and to address any issues he had. But if I had done literally nothing to cause suspicion, then I expected him to trust me. He agreed with me, and he said that I have done nothing, and he never asked again. One of those conversations was my boyfriend asking about my friend Roger. Roger, 2 years before Paul and I started dating, confessed feelings of love for me. I told him I wasn't interested, and that was that. By the time I was seeing Paul, I had absolutely no reason to think things were anything but platonic between Roger and myself. A week ago, Roger and I got together for coffee. Again, I want to stress that before this happened, I had literally no reason at all to think he had held on to those feelings. At the cafe, Roger suddenly went on this impassioned monologue about how much he still loved me, how Paul was a terrible boyfriend and I should dump him and be with Roger, how loyal Roger was, how perfect we were together, etc. I was pretty much silent throughout this whole speech because I was so surprised and uncomfortable. But when he stopped, I told him, probably not as strong as I should have, but I didn't know what to do, I told him that I loved Paul, that I was absolutely not leaving Paul, and that I needed to go home immediately. I was shaken up by the whole thing, so I took my time getting home to calm down. But by the time I got home, I found that Roger had sent a long, utterly insane Facebook message to Paul detailing how much he loved me, that we were destined to be together, and heavily implying, but not outright stating, that Roger and I had been carrying on an affair for weeks. I don't know why he did this. I have no explanation. Paul believes it completely. He has listened to my explanation of things, but thinks I am lying. He doesn't want to see me or talk to me at all anymore. I'm completely devastated that Paul would believe this Facebook message over me. I'm horrified that my relationship with him has ended like this. I'm embarrassed that now I'm being seen as a cheater and a horrible woman who slept around on Paul. I'm utterly hateful towards Roger. It's been a week and I can't convince Paul to talk to me. I know he's had those trust issues in the past, but I really believed we were long past them. What do I do? Then in the comment section, OP replied to a comment saying that you can't be friends with someone after they tell you they love you, to which OP said, I definitely hear what you're saying, but I just want to point out I never believed feelings would magically evaporate. Roger said he loved me 5 years ago. We were distant from each other for about a year after he told me he loved me, then reconnected through mutual friends, and were friends for a year before I dated Paul. During that year, he acted totally platonically around me, and I guess I thought he had had enough time to get over his feelings. He's been totally platonic as well for the 3 years I've been with Paul. Obviously, I was wrong, and you were right about how I should have cut him out, but I didn't think the feelings would just disappear. I thought the year we weren't really in contact had made them go away. However, Paul already has heard the whole and complete story, including what Roger said 5 years ago. He thinks I'm lying, but I keep telling him there is nothing between Roger and I now. Should I still push the issue with Paul and try and make him talk to me? He's heard everything already, but he just refuses to believe me. Update. I want to thank everyone so much for commenting. Before I post what happened, I just want to address a few things that I didn't get to in the first post. First, Paul knew I was having coffee with Roger. It wasn't some kind of secret thing. Paul has female friends he has lunch or coffee with alone too, so this isn't unusual in our relationship. Second, Paul did not know that Roger had said he loved me 5 years ago. I definitely made a mistake not telling him that, but honestly, it was so long ago, and to my obviously wrong knowledge was old history. We did not extensively discuss our pasts, so there wasn't really a natural point where it would have come up, and it just never occurred to me to say anything. Finally, Roger and I did not have a particularly intense friendship. It's not like we were texting constantly or best buddies. We hung out occasionally and would be in touch if something relevant came up, but we didn't just chat randomly. Anyway, with that being said, I took the advice of some Redditors, and when I was a little calmer, I messaged Roger on Facebook asking him why he lied. He responded with, "What do you mean?" At which point I started pressing him harder. He responded only with one-word answers, and honestly didn't reply to most of my messages at all. And no matter how much I asked, he never actually said anything of a definitive statement. Nothing like, yes, I lied for such and such reason. Finally, I sent him a definitive statement that said I had never had an affair with him, that I was incredibly hurt and angry, and that our friendship was over, and that he was never to contact me again. He replied with, okay, and that was that. I sent the entire Facebook conversation to Paul, not thinking it would save us, but to just try and clear my name. In the message, I asked him if Roger's reactions to my questions and my response to Roger was in line with what he would expect if Roger's accusations were true. Paul didn't respond that day, but the next day, he called me. Paul basically said that the more he thought about it, the more he believed me, and that the conversation between Roger and I helped him believe that Roger's responses didn't make sense, and that he now thought nothing had gone on. However, he said despite that the trust was broken between us, he couldn't be with me. I got pretty mad and yelled at him, asking why I was being punished for nothing, and he just basically disengaged from the discussion. Not my finest moment, I know. I was just so overwhelmed with frustration. We did eventually end the conversation calmly, if not amicably, and he is dropping off the stuff that I had left at his apartment later this week. I have learned my lesson. Not only will any declaration of interest by a friend end that friendship forever, but I will never date someone who has trust issues or a history of being cheated on again. I'm sure I come across as a little bitter about this, but honestly, I feel like there was absolutely no point to my fidelity and honesty during those 3 years. I got treated like a cheater whether or not I did cheat, and both Paul and I ended up hurt and alone despite being 100% faithful. Better to end up alone or stick to a friends with benefits than end up investing in another 3 years in a relationship to have this be the conclusion. Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, I can't understand Roger. How does he live with himself? I could never do that to someone. I suspect, based on what I know of Roger, that he got angry when I rejected him and impulsively sent the message to Paul. He's not a psycho, well usually, so I'm betting that after a bit he realized how terrible what he had done was, and that it is why he avoided me/refused to talk to me when I Facebook messaged him. Why he wouldn't apologize or try and make it right, I have no idea. Then user 2 commented and said, OP, you said any declaration of interest by a friend will end that friendship forever. This is just a side note, and the main thing is you got rid of both of these sources of drama, so good for you, but I'm a guy who has declared interest in people and then gone on to be good friends after being rejected. As in really just friends. So I'd choose carefully because perhaps you'll write some decent people off if you have a blanket rule. I totally get why you feel that though. I thought this would be possible, but honestly, I got a ton of comments, and I'm still getting them, saying how ridiculous I was to ever imagine I could continue to have someone in my life who confessed feelings for me. A lot of people have pointed out that by allowing Roger to be a friend or a part of my life at all was a huge mistake, and frankly, looking at the result, I have to agree. I may write off some decent people, which would be a shame, but this has convinced me that I can't allow anyone in my life that might be holding or have at some point held feelings for me if I don't return them. So, first and foremost, Roger, he's got a whole bunch of problems. Secondly, the ex-boyfriend, Paul, he's got a whole bunch of problems, and it seems like OP now has some new problems. And you know what the answer is? Therapy! But, I love making a fool of myself. I understand why not wanting to continue being in contact or friends with someone who has confessed feelings for you, but it's really just an individual thing. I really do think it is possible to continue being friends with someone after they've confessed feelings and you don't reciprocate or they don't reciprocate, but it's a little tricky. It's possible. I've been in these situations. I've known other people who have been in these situations, and I know other people who are just like, all right, we're done, bye. It's up to the person who is receiving the affection, and it's up to the person giving the affection. It's a case-by-case basis. So I understand why some people are saying this. I understand why some people are saying that. But, I don't know. It's messy. I don't know, right? Like, I wouldn't encourage OP to do the whole blanket statement thing, but I understand why. But I feel like that's just because she's been hurt by these individuals, and now she's just like, all right, I don't want to deal with it ever again, which is understandable. But like that one person said, she might be writing off some good people. But anyway, what do you guys think? I'm really curious about this one. But next story. Story number 4. Leasing company sealed living squirrels in my walls. What do I do? I live in the United States in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I put in a maintenance ticket back in January to have holes sealed up at the edge of my roof where squirrels had gotten in, and I could hear them chewing around at the wood in the walls on a regular basis. Month after month, I would contact the leasing company for my house any way I could and inquire as to when this was going to get resolved. Yesterday, they finally came out with a crane and did this metal work and expanding foam job, cutting down my little library to reach it. I thanked them for finally relieving me from the sounds of squirrels chewing apart the insides of the house I'm living in. Unfortunately, about 2 hours later, I hear the same chewing sounds I've heard for months. But this time, it was obvious that the squirrels were trapped inside my house and trying to get out. I've even taken photos of one of the squirrel's arms struggling through a tiny opening in the metalwork. I've created multiple maintenance tickets of high importance both yesterday and today. Today's being listed as an emergency. I tried calling their office and got a voicemail, and after hours, I tried calling them and selected I had an emergency maintenance request. But each time it rings, it only rings for a few times and then automatically hangs up on me. I try to leave a voicemail, but it just says that their voicemail box is full. I don't know what to do. I can't get a hold of anyone at the leasing company. The roof is 3 stories up, and the squirrels have probably 18 hours max before they die of dehydration, at which point my heart will break and I'll have multiple animals rotting in my walls. It's like a horror novel. I can hear them just scratching and chewing desperately, trying to get out of what has been their home for months, and it has now become their crypt. What do I do? Who do I contact? My current only plan is to get up as early as possible and drive to their headquarters and hope that someone's actually there. Sometimes there's just no one at the office in the middle of the week. I'm just listening to animals dying in my walls, and the people who sealed them in there have made themselves unreachable. Then in the comment section, one user suggested to OP to contact animal control, to which OP said, I did contact animal control, and they let me know that they unfortunately aren't allowed to destroy property without permission of the homeowner, which is not me. Really wonderful lady. She expressed her sympathy for my situation. The only thing I can do at this point is to go to their office first thing in the morning and drive a resolution. I really appreciate you taking the time to post a comment and give me advice. It means a lot. Then another user suggested the fire department, to which OP said, I appreciate your feedback. They unfortunately aren't willing to damage the house I'm in, as I am not the official homeowner. I told them about the leasing company and inadvertently sealing them in. Then one user commented and said, OP, man up and effing climb up there, you despicable coward. Okay, let me just go to Home Depot at 12:30 in the morning and get a ladder, you effing inconsiderate toxic idiot. Have an effing heart. Then, in a more nicer comment, one user suggested to OP to get a ladder. I don't own the property, and because it's 3.5 stories up, and because it's almost 1 in the morning, I'm going to do the best I can in the morning to make this happen. But hearing this BS from this a-hole doesn't help anything. I feel freaking awful, and there's nothing I can do right now. I'm going to bed, and I'm going to get up as early as I can and try to get this resolved. Edit. I just woke up, and unfortunately, I can hear them still struggling to find a way out. Update post, 3 days later. After hearing about my dilemma, my sister and her partner, who are both strong animal lovers with animal rescue experience, drove all the way down from the Duluth area to give me a hand with my situation. While on their way down, they talked me into pulling the trigger on rescue efforts, and I made a few choice hole-in-my-walls to try and tap into the squirrel's pathways. I turned off all my lights and closed up all my windows except for one, which I pulled the screen out of, so that any squirrel coming out of the wall would see that as their way out. Within half an hour, I heard a squirrel come closer and I saw its head pop out. Holding perfectly still, I started recording as the abrupt guest checked out of my room, and eventually found the open window and escaped. While it was looking around, a second squirrel had popped out of the wall, but this squirrel was much more wary of me. He checked things out, but jumped back into the wall when I moved my head, thinking a squirrel was actually coming in from the outside across the room. The second squirrel made another appearance a bit later, drank some of the water I left out, looked me right in the eyes for about a minute and a half, and then noped right back into the wall. It was around this time I set up a little web camera I fashioned out of an old cell phone, so I could keep an eye on things without needing to be in the room. The squirrel must have decided to go to sleep, which was around the time my sister and her partner arrived with pizza. During the night, I had a travel mug jammed into the wall, so I didn't wake up to a squirrel on my face. However, starting at 2 a.m. and every few hours after, I would hear the squirrel start plinking away at the bottom of the travel mug. At 6 a.m., when there was some light out, I opened up the window closest to the hole and pulled out the travel mug. 5 minutes later, squirrel number 2 jumped out through my window to freedom. I was ecstatic until I realized I could hear a bit of scratching at the other end of the house. Apparently, the 2 fascias weren't connected by squirrel pathways, so there was a third squirrel still trapped. With my sister's advice, our crew ended up duct taping a hammer to the end of a broom handle, Tears of the Kingdom style, and her partner was able to pry open a section of the roof enough for the third squirrel to get out by leaning out the third-story window. An unbelievable and insane 48 hours. I'd like to thank everyone who commented on my last post for all of your advice and your offerings of help. I honestly forgot about the post and didn't have notifications on, and my mind melted when I saw the hundreds of comments in the private messages. I promise I will read through all of them. I'd also like to thank my roommate for giving recommendations on where I should hammer, my sister and her partner for all the love and support they provided me, for driving all the way down from Duluth to save a couple of squirrels and support me, and for being the best people I've ever known. If you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Just let me know. I'm looking forward to doing a bit of drywalling. Then OP provided more information in the comment section and said, "Thanks again, everyone. I felt so alone dealing with this situation until my sister and her partner showed up. And then to see all of the love and support here was such a mind-blowing surprise. It made my heart happy. Thank you all so much." Then one commenter said, "Dude, thanks for the update. I've been checking back to see what happened. So glad you were able to help them. Good on you for doing something about it. Not everyone would." Yeah, I realized I just couldn't live with myself if I didn't do anything. Couldn't have done it without all the support I received, and some crazy lucky estimations on hole placement. Then OP made one last comment and said, "I'm sorry it took so long. I mentioned my squirrel fiasco finally coming to a close while grabbing a drink at a Modest Brewing last night, and a friend that was there said, 'Oh, you are the squirrel guy? I saw your post on Reddit.' I really had no idea this took off the way it did. My mind exploded seeing how many notifications there were. I felt so bad not getting back to everyone sooner." Story number 5. My 24F boyfriend 27M has disappeared every weekend for the past 3 years, and I just found out he's been lying to me about where he goes. My boyfriend 27M and I 24F have been together for 3 years. We don't live together, but are close enough to spend a lot of time together. However, it is very rare for us to spend a whole day together. When we have, it's been a weekday, where our schedules have just happened to line up. i.e. no work and no classes. We have never spent a day on the weekend together. He works as a research assistant while getting his PhD. Every single weekend for the last 3 years we've been together, he insists he has work. I realize how stupid I've been now, but I foolishly trusted him. I trusted that he had work every single weekend for 3 years. That was until today. I've been studying for finals, and it's the toughest it's ever been, so I was craving some time with him, just a day where we could kick back and relax with each other. Of course, he says he can't because he's working, and I shut up about it. So today I'm getting antsy anyway, and hoping we could at least spend the evening together. I end up texting him, asking when he thinks he'll be back and if we can spend the night together. I've done this plenty of times before, and he always responds fairly quickly. This time, I'm waiting for a while. After 2 hours, I decide to send a text message to a work friend of his who is also a research assistant with him. And wouldn't you know it, it turns out they don't have work today. In fact, the friend informs me in that same text message that they rarely ever have work on weekends. Rarely ever. So now I'm sitting here wondering what the hell is going on. I have no idea how to confront him about this. I mean, this has been going on for 3 years. If he's cheating on me, he basically has a second family at this point. But obviously, that's where my mind goes, and I have no clue what else it could be. Like, is there any possible explanation for this besides cheating? How in the world do I confront him about something he's been doing for 3 years? Since he's doing whatever it is tomorrow, do I just drive over to his place in the morning and wait and then follow him? Has anyone had anything like this happen to them before? Then in the comments section, one user said, I would just ask him first and be like, hey, I texted your work friend while I was waiting for you to reply, and he said you never work weekends? OP, even if he's not cheating on you, he's lying. Don't stalk him, don't play games. Okay, but what's stopping him from just lying again? Like, even if I confront him, he could just insist that he's working or coming up with an excuse. The only proof I have is the text from his coworker. I feel like that might not be enough to get him to tell the truth. I don't know. Update number 1. So I logged into this account for the first time since making my original post and find that there are a lot of messages. I haven't read them all, but I will. The recent ones all ask for an update, so here it is. When I logged off, things seemed to be pretty split on what I should do. Most people just decided to call him a cheater or say that I'm the side chick. Frankly, I wasn't sure I could wait another day to confront him, so I confronted him the night of that post. No games, stalking, or anything. Anyway, I had texted him telling him to come over when his work was done, and he did. I waited about 5 minutes, if that, for him to settle in before telling him that we needed to talk about something important. He immediately responded with, uh-oh, which was a bit demeaning, but that sarcastic response honestly matches his personality. I tell him everything that happened, how hurt I was, how I didn't feel like I could trust him about anything considering he's been doing this for 3 years, and then asked if he had anything to say. He told me he wasn't cheating on me or anything like that. He was just embarrassed on what he had been doing. I asked him what he could possibly be so embarrassed about as to hide it and lie to me about it for 3 years. He takes like a minute to compose himself and then mutters something. He clearly feels guilty, but I obviously don't hear it, so I ask him what he said because I didn't hear. He tells me that he volunteers at a homeless shelter every weekend since coming here for his PhD. Volunteering at a homeless shelter. I swear to you, whatever emotions are coming across here were multiplied 10x in the moment. I could not comprehend what he was saying. Like he was embarrassed for volunteering at a homeless shelter? It didn't, and still doesn't, make any sense. So I asked him what he meant, and he repeated that he volunteers at a homeless shelter for 6 hours on Saturday and 6 hours on Sunday every weekend. Of course, I ask him why he would be embarrassed about that, and he asks if we can talk about this more tomorrow, Sunday, and he can instead show me that he isn't lying by taking me to volunteer. I don't know what I was really thinking. I think my mind was just blank. So I agreed with sure and asked him to leave. He apologized for the whole thing and left. Then sent a text message that he would pick me up in the morning so he can prove to me that he's not lying. Of course, my mind races all night, and I tossed and turned all night. But Sunday came anyway, and he wasn't lying. He takes me to a homeless shelter / soup kitchen place. I don't really know the difference. And we make food, clean and pack daily necessities for 6 hours. It clearly isn't the best place to have the conversation, so I spent most of my time doing the work and chatting with other people. And they were really nice, but of course, the whole thing was still weighing on my mind the entire time. So I started asking them about my boyfriend, and they confirmed that he's been working there as long as they remember, and is there every weekend. He's been there longer than most of them, it seems. Finally, our volunteering ends, and we head back to his car, and I try to start the conversation, but he shuts me down and asks me to wait until we get back to his place. I say fine, maybe I'm being a doormat here, but I was just so confused and lost, and we head to his apartment. Once there, the talking begins. He asks if I believe that he's telling the truth about working at the homeless shelter every weekend, and I say that I do since I confirmed it with a lot of people while there. But I also said that I don't understand the lying, especially for as long as he did. He apologizes again and asks if I really want to know why he kept it a secret. I say of course, duh. He sighs, and then he tells me that he doesn't like people knowing that he likes helping people. Obviously, I'm going, what the hell, because this is so weird, and I ask him to explain. He tells me that when he was an undergrad student, he would always try and help his class behind the scenes by discussing problems they had, or negotiating for curves or extensions on their assignments, even when he didn't personally need it. He said he enjoyed doing it and kept doing it as a master's student, but then started to do so before/after classes publicly. Apparently, most of his classmates were still happy with him, but a few basically hated him for it because he was babying them or something. So he went back to doing things behind the scenes and no longer tries to associate himself with any of the things he does to help others. Hopefully, I'm not the only one who finds this so dang weird. Like, the homeless shelter stuff and assisting your classmates aren't remotely the same. So I say as such, and he tells me it does the same thing. It helps people, so he doesn't like people to know about it because they might misinterpret his intent and think he's masquerading as a good person. Then he assures me that he's not a good person at all, but he still wants to do what he can for people, so this is what he does. WTF? So I ask if he really thinks I would get mad that he's helping homeless people in his free time. He tells me he wasn't sure at first, especially since I wanted to spend weekends together when we first started going out. Duh, every couple does. So he just lied to hide it at first, but he knows I wouldn't do that now, but kept the lie going because he thought it would be too weird to suddenly say that he's volunteering at a homeless shelter. I feel like I've come to the conclusion that he's just really, really weird. His way of thinking has always been odd, but this in particular is just so weird. Like, he seems to understand the situation and where I'm coming from, but didn't think to tell me the truth on his own? We started going in circles, so I ended the conversation and had him drive me home in silence. Since then, he sent a number of text messages and has tried to call me a few times. I didn't pick up on Monday or Tuesday because I felt like I needed time to think. But I finally picked up today, and we had a talk in which we both reiterated what we had said. I know a lot of people, literally all of them at this time, were telling me to break up with him, but I'm still thinking things through. I'm going to try and get him to hang out with me this weekend and make my decision after I think some more. This whole thing has been so weird. I'm sorry that I've repeated that so much, but my brain is still rather scrambled. I don't think there will be any more updates to this because we either stay together or break up. Edit. Reading through a lot of the comments on their previous post now. To answer the most common questions, I haven't met his parents, but I have met a few of his friends. He doesn't have social media. He's met my family since I'm local, and we do spend holidays together if they aren't on weekends. Now, here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, honestly, it is strange that he felt the need to lie about it, but at the same time, it does seem like he has good intentions. A lot of people like to do volunteer/charity work, donations, etc., and keep it quiet because they don't want to seem like they're trying to be a good person, and they just want to help those in need and keep it quiet, just like your boyfriend said. I understand your confusion and being upset about the lies, and that's completely valid. But in this situation, I do hope you give him another chance. It's very possible the embarrassment comes from the past trauma in his life. Personally, I've been in some bad situations and been on hard times, especially as a child with my single mom. And now that I'm grown and have the ability to help those that are in the situation I was once in, I basically feel obligated to help. Again, it's your relationship, and not being honest with you because of embarrassment is one thing, but I hope you two can discuss this more and figure it all out because you're both valid here in my opinion. I commend you for bringing it up to him, and I commend him for helping those in need. Good luck. Thank you. I'm going to talk with him some more and see. Obviously, we've been together for 3 years, and I really do love him, but this is just so strange to me. Like, I get having past trauma and that affecting behavior and whatever, but making a few enemies in your cohort translates to hiding volunteer work for 3 years? The whole thing is confusing. Then, one user asked OP about the boyfriend's parents, and if he had bad childhood years, such as abuse or manipulation from parents or family, and if this has affected his behaviors to be the people pleaser he is. Both of his parents are in his life. He's from out of state, and the last time he visited them in person was 2 years ago, I think. I've never met them, though I have spoken to his mom over FaceTime a handful of times. He's never mentioned having any trouble with his family, so I'm not yet at that point where I'm going to assume the worst. And finally, one user asked OP about the possible volunteering services being mandated by courts and if the boyfriend has done something illegal, and asked the volunteers to lie for him on his whereabouts. There have been quite a few comments about it possibly being court-ordered. I don't want to identify his field completely or anything because it's pretty niche, but if he had a criminal record, it would be incredibly difficult to work in his field, so I don't think he has one. I haven't looked at his messages or anything of the sort. Maybe people are going to call me naive for this, but getting every single volunteer I spoke to over that 6-hour period, in addition to some people who are making use of the services to lie for him, seems really unlikely. I think I underplayed the seriousness with which he explained the conflict with his classmates. I didn't follow it completely, but he really did seem very affected by the whole thing. Maybe he's acting, but it didn't look that way to me. Update number 2. So I asked him to come over so we could talk, and he did. I then asked him some of the questions people had on here that I had written down. Volunteering for 6 hours but still not having time for me. He said he would get there a little early and leave late, but would then spend the remaining hours running errands and actually working on PhD/assistant stuff. I asked if he could give me details. He gave me some details about academic articles that I don't remember. I asked why he couldn't spend more weekend evenings with me if this was the case. He said that he was really busy with work and that I would distract him. Ouch. Out of all the things said, I think this is the one that bothers me the most. I asked if the volunteering was court-ordered. He laughed at that and was clearly confused by the question, but answered that given the special population he works with doing his PhD, he doubts he'd be able to work with them if he had a record that required so many hours. I asked if he was ever going to tell me about the volunteering. He initially says he doesn't know. Then he replies that he probably wouldn't have. He apologized for lying, but then said that whether he was working or volunteering doesn't make a difference to how much time he spent with me. Obviously, I pushed back on this and he got defensive, and we had an argument that basically reiterated how I felt like I couldn't trust him because he was lying about this while he kept apologizing for the lying, on top of making me feel that way, but that it wouldn't have changed how we spent time together. Ultimately, I asked him to explain to me again why he hid it in the first place. Like he said previously, he used to talk to professors during undergrad about extensions and questions others had behind closed doors, and then made sure those things were stated to the rest of the class. He did the same thing in his master's program. This is where I got lost before. One of his professors was a hard ass, and some of his classmates were scared to talk to him about their grades. So he thought he could show them that he was willing to discuss grades, and he made a joke about his own grade in class. The professor didn't find it funny and went on a tirade about respect and showing him up, and apparently the class ended shortly thereafter because it was so tense. He said that some of the other students felt like they needed to cut ties with him to show the professor they weren't in on the joke, and that a few of them made a show of hating him from that point forward. Hearing it more in depth at least makes this make a little more sense to me. I stated again that helping homeless people and helping classmates seemed like entirely different things altogether. He said that they felt like the same thing to him, but that I was probably right and he was wrong. I then asked him why he said he's a bad person. He replied asking if he had said that, and I said yes. He said that he didn't want the volunteering to make him seem like a good person because he's not. I asked what he meant, and he replied that I know him. I said, I'm not sure I do. He said that I know what he means. I don't, you do, etc. in circles. Personally, I think he has low self-esteem, but this is a weird way to express it, and I'm not sure what else it could be. I told him I wasn't sure I wanted to continue the relationship because of the lying. He seemed hurt, but then just said okay, and that it's my decision. I told him that he should at least get therapy for the classmate thing because it's clearly affected him negatively. He replied that he probably should, but he won't. After that, I gave him an ultimatum. Either spend more time with me on the weekends and go to therapy, or we break up. I told him to think about it and that he has until Saturday. He said he would, and he went on his way. Final update. This will probably be my last post here. Saturday came and he asked me to compromise. He would take a day off from volunteering if I volunteered with him the other day, and he wouldn't have to go to therapy. I said I needed to think about it. I told him later that night that I'd accept the compromise if he was willing to go to one therapy session. On Sunday morning, he told me he wouldn't be willing to go to therapy and asked that we could go out to dinner. We went to a local diner and basically talked about ending things. He apologized for ending things this way and said that he knew he wasn't exactly being reasonable, but he's doing what he feels like he needs to do. I basically said, that's up to him. We wished each other the best, and he gave me a parting hug, and I went on my way. So yeah, 3 years of commitment for this. Kind of sucks. Have a good day. Update. It's me again. I'm pretty intoxicated while writing this, so let me first just say sorry for my incomprehensibleness. Is that even a word? Anyway, if you don't remember who I am, check my profile. Anyway, I've been keeping busy with myself and school and stuff, but some casual stuff every once in a while has been good stress relief. What isn't good stress relief was a text message I received today. I should have blocked him, but I didn't, so here we are. I didn't respond to him, but here's the message verbatim. Hello, sorry for contacting you. I am sorry for how I acted. After you left, I really gave a lot of things some thought. I didn't want therapy because I didn't need a professional to tell me that I'm different or weird or diagnose me with something that jeopardizes my profession. And I especially didn't want them to try and change me. I bit the bullet in January. I was diagnosed with schizotypal personality disorder. You can look it up, I guess. I'm not seeing the therapist frequently, especially after he suggested altering some of my behaviors and told me that I'm coping using my volunteering. Sorry, I'm just saying that you were right and I wasn't being fair to you. Please do not feel burdened to respond. I hope you are happy. And that's the end of the message. God, he hopes I'm happy? I mean, really, after everything, he acts like some sort of victim? I hate it so much. Every single time I've thought of him since we broke up, I just get more angry. I guess it is nice to know I wasn't imagining things and there is something actually wrong with them. But did he have to contact me? Gross. Anyway, I was huffing and drinking and spotted my login details still on my laptop desktop and figured an update wouldn't be too hard. I hope you guys know how to pick them better than me. So we've read or listened to a lot of these stories and you see certain human behaviors and stuff like that and you're like, okay, this person's acting weird because of something that happened here earlier in the story or something we're going to learn later in the story. And then you're like, okay, now it's insecurities, it's trauma, it's revenge, anger. But I was with OP, the whole volunteering thing and then the stuff with the classmates just didn't really connect with me. Like I could kind of see it, but it wasn't clicking. And now I guess we had that middle ground to connect the dots here. And it was the fact that he had schizotypal disorder, schizophrenic tendencies, it seems, personality disorder, like he said. So I'm glad that he went to a therapist. I don't know what he's going to do. We don't know what he's going to do, but something just was wrong and he went in and he looked inward and unfortunately there is something wrong. And hopefully that doesn't affect his career or his life too much. I don't really know how you handle that or what you do next. OP, her last post, she was drunk, so a lot of emotions it seems. And of course, there's the lying in the matter of trust, even if he didn't cheat or anything. And OP was just like, yeah, I should have realized when he wasn't available every weekend for 3 years. But, you know, it's just, what do? You live and you learn. But anyway, next story. Story number 6. A customer bounced a $400 check to my small business and then told me to suck his you-know-what when I called him about it. I can't afford small claims. Please, offer advice. I'm desperate. As the title says, a real jerk came into my flower store. He very rudely ordered 12 custom flower bowls we made for him. I made him his order and he picked it up. At the time of pickup, he was very hesitant to write me the check. He wanted to order more and then come back with one big check. I said no. Check now, please. He signed his name and tossed it to me. I had to write in the dollar amount. Now the check is bouncing. I've been by his bank every day for 2 weeks to attempt a cashier check, but he doesn't have the funds in the account. I think he uses this checkbook for this exact reason. The check was number 3 from the book. Does anyone have any advice? I'm crying myself to sleep thinking about this. I can't afford to open a court case. My current ideas are 1. Putting up a sign that says David last name writes bad checks on my road sign next to a major road in town. 2. I could call his employer. Or 3. Anything else that is illegal. I'm about to drive through the neighborhood and look for my flowers. Also, through Google research, I see he was awarded $20,000 in PPP loans 2 years ago. Can I do anything with that? Please help me get this man. I just want to grow my flowers. Update. The police just left the greenhouse. They collected the paperwork I have for the whole mess. When the officer looked at the name of the guy, he said, "Oh no, please don't drop the charges on this one. I want to see it go through." And then he sat in his squad car for a few minutes and made a bunch of phone calls. That's a good sign. Now here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "Small claims court is usually not more than $50 to open a complaint. You will win, but you'll also learn win is much different than collected. You may not be able to collect anything. File a report with the police and at the bank. Learn not to accept a check from new accounts and accept credit cards or preferably cash. And don't start stalking someone. You don't know this guy's name for certain. Even if you read off his driver's license, it could be faked. That is good to know. File a report with the police and with his bank. Got it. I'll be doing that when they open. I don't know how to file with small claims, but this is a good opportunity for a crash course. I'm upset about the money, but at this point I am just so mad that a grown, successful man can walk around with his chest out all the while stomping on me. A young girl who is barely starting up. He drives a dozen different SUVs, and because of him, I'm working every shift this week, unable to pay my employee. Then, user 2 commented and said, "He is an abuser with an ego, and he is not doing as well as you are, but makes sure that fact is hidden under his brashness and his chest-outness. Let us help you a little. If you're willing to give out your shop name, perhaps some of us can buy a few flowers and leave a tip. In the meantime, report. Make sure to have a shame list with names of past customers who have screwed you, even if they end up paying. Actions have consequences. First time, shame on you. Second time, shame on me. So let yourself remind yourself and your employees that man should never get farther than showing his ID before he is run off. Also, never accept checks. Tons of other ways to pay nowadays. Even businesses will find a way. For example, my business can do bank-to-bank transfers, PayPal, credit card, and we can do business checks, but we prefer the other three." Wow. Oh my gosh, thank you for being understanding. These comments have me feeling extra stupid for learning this lesson. And thank you for the offer on spreading my business. My greenhouse is attached to my house, and my retail gazebo is in my front field. I think I'm done learning hard lessons today, so I'm not going to post my home address on Reddit, but thank you again. Update. Thank you everyone who encouraged me to fight for my money. I filed a police report. The cop came out to my store, and when I handed him the information I had on the guy, he chuckled and said, "Oh, this guy. If you want to open a report, that's fine and he deserves it. But he always comes running when we call him." And sure enough, he showed up an hour after the police had left him a message. He said I had no right involving the police, and it was so far out of line that I needed to appease him somehow with a discount on more flowers. He demanded I call the officer while he was there so he could see me drop the report. I told him our business is done and stood my ground. It was great. He left, and it honestly felt like it was the first time he did not get his way in a long time. Now, here are some final relevant comments. One user said, "That's awesome." Now, put his picture at the register and a sign that says, "Refuse service, bad checks, theft." Face it where everyone can see it at the register. Include his name. It won't be illegal. P.S. I hope your business grows as big as you want it. You deserve it. I told the cop that I had been planning to put "David last name writes bad checks" on my street sign. The cop laughed and said even after David pays, I should still put that on my sign because it's still true. That made me feel good. David last name, whoever you are, if I ever see you and you hand me a check, I'm going to eat it because I don't know what to do with checks, okay? I used to work customer service and fast food, and after years of doing it, some person, an old lady, by the way, no surprise, came up to me and was like, "Here you go," and gave me a check, and I was like, I need a manager. What do I do with this? Checks are so old and outdated, they should just be banned and illegal. And when I'm president, checks will be burnt, okay? They're stupid and dumb, and I don't care if I sound young and ignorant. I hate checks, and it's for this reason exactly. I'm joking, of course. I don't need to be president to burn all the checks in the world. But as for the story, OP had a problem, and it got resolved. And the police officer was like, "Yo, it's a little personal here. I don't like this guy." And when the police officer says, "I don't like this guy," you know something's getting done. But anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching the long video. It means a lot. But